The Q&A. I want to kind of just wrap up what was already said, and that is in the advice that was given by Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the companion of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He said, إِذَا سُمْتَ فَلْيَصُمْ سَمْعُكَ وَبَصَرُكَ وَلِسَانُكَ عَنِ الْكَذِبِ وَالْمَأْثَمِ. Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said, when one of you fasts, then let his hearing fast, let his sight fast, let his tongue fast from lying and from sinful speech. It's critical that we understand these three. Let your hearing fast. Let your sight fast. When you're fasting, when it's Ramadan, see, it's haram to listen to somebody else backbite, for example. That's haram all year round. But when you're fasting, it's worse. When you're fasting, it's worse to listen to somebody engaged in vulgar and obscene speech and things like that. You know, not to mention listening to other things that you have no business listening to. Let your sight fast. There are things that are haram for you to look at all the time. But during the month of Ramadan, and when you're fasting, it's even worse. And so you have to let your sight fast. It can't just be your stomach. Let your sight fast. Let your tongue fast, which are some of the things that we talked about, which is why you need to be engaged in the recitation of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reading the book of Allah. Because if you don't busy your time with that which is beneficial, your time is going to be occupied for you by things that are not as beneficial. Let your tongue fast from lying and sinful speech. وَدَعْ أَذَا خَادِمِكِ. He goes on to say, and leave off annoying your servant, your maid. I mean, this was something that was commonplace then, but even now we find it's quite common for brothers that ask their wives to do certain things that keep them in the kitchen all day and all night. Leave that off during the month of Ramadan. Don't do that. He said, وَلْيَكُنْ عَلَيْكَ وَقَارٌ وَسَكِينَةٌ. And let there be a calmness to you. You should be relaxed when you're fasting. It's important that you have that people recognize you as being a fasting person. You're tranquil, you're cool. Even if you are normally a hothead, that's not something that you can take into fasting with you. You got to slow that down during your fasting. During the month of Ramadan, you take on a different demeanor. And then he finishes that advice by saying, وَلَا يَكُنْ يَوْمَ صَوْمِكَ كَيَوْمَ فِطْرِكَ سَوَاءً. وَلَا يَكُنْ يَوْمَ صَوْمِكَ وَيَوْمَ فِطْرِكَ سَوَاءً. And don't let the day that you fast be like the day that you don't fast. SubhanAllah, a lot of us, we behave the same, whether we're fasting or not. We say the same things, whether we're fasting or not. We do the same things, whether we're fasting or not. Some of us are going to miss Tarawih because we'll be watching the NBA Finals. Nah, that's just the reality. But if you plan in advance and you recognize that that's really not that important in the scheme of things, it's not important at all, but in the scheme of things, you might be missing Laylatul Qadr, a serious opportunity because you're addicted to sports or something like that. Whatever addictions you have, Ramadan is a good time to get over that. And you don't let those things come in the way of your worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last piece of advice, inshallah, because fasting is a shield. And if we do it right, it's going to protect us. It's going to protect us from those things which would demean us and dislike. and is going to protect us from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next. It raises you in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala darajat, levels, in front of Allah azza wa jalla. The last piece of advice I have as it relates to that is the importance of dua in the month of Ramadan. The importance of dua in the month of Ramadan. Allah azza wa jalla says, in the middle of all, for those of you who read the Quran frequently, how many times does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about Ramadan in the Quran? How many different places? How many different surahs? Multiple choice type. 1 surah, 2 surahs, 3 surahs, or 4 surahs? Which one? Like 1? Who says 4? Let's start at 4. Anybody say 4? Going once, going twice? Like 3. Anybody say 3? Okay. 2. What are those 2? Baqarah and Qadr. Even though Qadr is not specifically talking about fasting in the month of Ramadan, okay, that's fine. Yeah. So the only place Allah Azza wa Jalla actually talks about the fast of Ramadan is in Surah Al-Baqarah. In the middle of those ayahs when he's talking about fasting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servant asks you about me, I am close. I am near. I answer the call of the one who calls upon me when he calls upon me. And that means that you have to put forth that effort to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's significant in the month of Ramadan, and it's interesting when you look at the question that Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we know what night Laylatul Qadr is, and Laylatul Qadr, as we know, is khayrun min alfi shahr, it's better and superior, better than 1,000 months. 1,000 months is how many years, by the way? 83 and some change. Which means that sometimes, and that's one of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this ummah, that even though we may not live as long as, for example, the people of Nuh, he was giving them dawah for 950 years. They have all this opportunity to make salat and give zakat and whatever else. 83 some odd years. The worship that you perform in that night is multiplied as if you did it for 83 years continuously. So if you pray, for example, Salat al-Isha and Salat al-Fajr in the masjid, and it catches Laylatul Qadr, then it's as if you prayed what? The entire night? It's as if you prayed the entire night. And then that's multiplied as if you prayed the entire night for 83 years. And that's the reward that a person gets. If you add on top of that, praying Taraweeh, and you stay until the Imam leaves, then that's as if you prayed the entire night again. I mean, the reward is tremendous. If you give sadaqah on that night, this is something that you would like. We need to plan for this stuff. Because a lot of times we don't think about it. Just, if you gave $20 on Laylatul Qadr, it's like you gave $20 every day for 83 years. That's the reward. But beyond that, it's already multiplied 10 to 700 times. And then that is multiplied as if you did it for 83 years. But a lot of times we just, it's the last 10 nights. I'm just trying to get Ramadan over with at this point. No, matter of fact, the last 10 nights is preparation for the Eid. Gotta go out, get my wife some new shoes. Wife gotta go out and buy the kids stuff. And the last 10 nights of Ramadan? No. Ramadan, you got about 10 days now until Ramadan. This is the time you need to go plan for the Eid. You don't need to be spending your time during the last 10 nights trying to figure out what's going to happen for the Eid. It's the wrong time to do that. Because you might be missing out on Laylatul Qadr and spending Laylatul Qadr in the mall, which is khusran. That's a tremendous loss. So, I forget what point I was trying to. Where was I? We got lost somewhere in Laylatul Qadr. Oh, we were talking about the verse of dua. How it comes right there in the middle of those verses and dealing with Ramadan. What should you be doing on Laylatul Qadr besides praying? Besides, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala and has said to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Ya Rasulullah, if I know what night Laylatul Qadr is, meaning she sees the sign, she knows what it is, she didn't say, what do I do? You know what she asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What should I say? What should I say? Shows you the importance of dua on Laylatul Qadr. And so she said, the Prophet ﷺ told her to say, Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Oh Allah, you are al-afu, you're the partner, you love to pardon, so pardon me. I mean, the point is that even, from that question, we recognize that they understood the importance of dua, and that is how you spend a lot of your time in Ramadan, because it shows your true need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so I'm recommending that you spend some time every day after Fajr. If you take a book, last week we talked about the book Fiqh al-Adiyya wal-Adhkar by Shaykh Tahir Wyatt hafidhahullah ta'ala, the book that deals with the fiqh of making dua and dhikr. And there's a portion that was translated by Abu Muhammad, Shaykh Abdul Shakir. There's a portion that was translated, and many of you have seen. If I showed it to you right now, and I forgot to bring a copy, you would know exactly what I'm talking about, because the book makes its rounds. He doesn't sell it. They sell it to masjids for $1 a piece, and then they pass it out, right? That book, there's one that deals with just the prayers that you make, the dua that you make in the night and in the day. The morning after Fajr before sunrise, and the evening after Asr and before Maghrib. If you read that on a daily basis, you try to read that book at least 10 times in the month of Ramadan, you'll be learning those dua. And you'll get consistent in making dua. Again, Ramadan is about building habits. And I'm going to say this until we get it right. Ramadan is not just about cleanup. Ramadan is about building habits. You have to take the time during Ramadan to become habitual in doing something more than you're doing right now. And if that's not what Ramadan is for you, then you are wasting a huge opportunity to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't think you're going to come and do premeditated sin and think that Ramadan is going to make that all okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cry in Ramadan, I'm going to pray at night, and Allah is going to forgive me for everything, and I'm going to go back and do exactly what I was doing 10 times worse right after Ramadan. This is not a joke, and it's not a game, and that's not what Ramadan is about. Yes, inshallah, you'll get clean. Ramadan will be a time to get clean. But it's not just the time to get clean, it's the time to change. And it's the time to build habits. And, most mental health professionals would tell you that it takes 21 days to build habits, whether they're bad or good. And Ramadan is 30 days. So you get 21 to build habits and then another 9 to reinforce those habits. And then you can make that a part of your life, inshallah ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. I'm taking, where's Father? Allah understand. Play. 15 minutes? 10 inshallah. 10. What's the questions? No matter where they're from. Just ask out loud inshallah. If there's questions, you can ask them now inshallah. Yes. The sisters have questions, write them down, do what with them? Who are they going to give them to? You going to send somebody back there inshallah? Like, Father.
What should a sister that is pregnant during Ramadan, what actions should she do to utilize that month without fasting? your recommendation for the sister who is not able to fast on Ramadan?
طيب الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ما بعد. For those sisters who are either fasting or breastfeeding or otherwise cannot fast the month of Ramadan, that doesn't exclude them from the virtue of the month itself. Ramadan is a virtuous month. And so she can still read the Quran. And she should engage in reading the Quran frequently. She can listen to the Quran, which is also a ibadah. And a lot of times we don't consider that to be a form of worship, but that's worship. The Prophet ﷺ went to Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and even Ubay ibn Ka'b, and he asked them to recite the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ would listen to them recite the Quran, which is an indication of that being a form of worship. Likewise, man fattara sa'iman falahu mithlu ajri. Whoever feeds a fasting person at the time of iftar, then for them is the reward of the one who is fasting. And so if she has the ability to feed someone who is fasting, even if that person she's feeding is her own husband, her children, or otherwise, she still shares in that reward bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Obviously, if she's pregnant, if she's breastfeeding, she can still pray at night with the rest of the Muslims in jama'ah, if that is what is going to bring her more khushu', which is something we have to talk about at a different time, because a lot of times we give precedence to the place of prayer as opposed to the prayer itself. What I mean by that is, where's the best place for women to pray? At home. Like, even for Taraweeh? It's not a trick question. You don't have to be scared. You're not. Huh? In the home. So in general, it's better for a woman to pray in her home. Like, what if she, when praying in her home, doesn't get the same feeling that she gets when she prays in the masjid? So in the house, for example, she hasn't memorized that much Quran. So she finds herself reading the same thing every day. And she gets just tired of hearing herself at a particular point. When she's at the masjid, she gets a different feeling. There's a community vibe to it. She likes the recitation of the imam and so on. And so when she's at the masjid, there's more khushu' for her prayer. Where is it better for her to pray? In the masjid. In the masjid. Why is that? Because we have a rule in Islam, and that is that the virtue that is directly connected to the ibadah, the virtue that is directly connected to the act of worship, takes precedence over the virtue that is connected to where that act of worship is performed. So how she feels, her khushu' in salat, takes precedence over where she prays. So it's better for her to pray in the masjid. Anyway, the point is that she can still pray in the masjid with the Muslims and so on and so forth, and get the reward, many rewards from this blessed month of Ramadan that is coming, inshallah. They're calling on people, not me. I'm just...
Quick question. For those brothers and sisters who have to, due to illness, if they have to feed a poor person for every day for the month of Ramadan, it might sound a little silly, my question, but do those platters that the gyro stands sell, like if you were to buy one for a poor person, if you are a person who is not able to fast, does that suffice the measurement of feeding a poor person for one has to feed?
No. So for the person who has to feed a poor person for each day, number one, there's a couple things that happen here. A lot of times, what happens in the Muslim community is we just have an iftar, and then everybody comes and eats, and we say we fed the people. No, you have to feed a poor person. It's number one, and that person should be Muslim as well. So it's not just enough to go drop off some food at a homeless shelter, for example, and think that you fulfilled your obligation. The obligation is to feed a poor Muslim. And the amount that is to be fed is, if it's prepared food, if it's cooked, then it should be that which would suffice them for dinner. That which would suffice them for dinner. So what you talked about, the platters with the rice and the meat and the salad, that's enough a lot of times for more than just one person. And that suffices. Nah.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Shaykh, you mentioned in Surah Hujurat about suspicion being a sin. In what cases is not a sin?
Right. So the scholars of tafsir, they mentioned that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says inna ba'd al-dhanni ithm, that some suspicion is sinful, that's a clear indication that not all suspicion is sinful. When it is not sinful is under two circumstances. One is that a person has a past history of doing things that are impermissible in Islam. So this person is known for a certain behavior. For example, you know that this person has a drinking problem. They come to you and ask you for some money. Your suspicion is what? That they're going to take that money to support whatever habit they have. In this case, even though you don't know exactly that they are going to do that with the money that you give them, because of the past experience that this person has shown, then you have a right to that suspicion. And you have a right to that suspicion. So that's in the case where a person has a history of doing something that is impermissible. The other scenario is when the qara'in, how would you, how you translate that? Okay, when there's circumstantial evidence, that's what it is. When there's circumstantial evidence that only adds up to mean one thing to you. So, in other words, you don't have firm, concrete evidence that something is going on. But all of the indicators show that that thing is going on. But you still shouldn't speak about it. Because as long as you keep it to yourself, then inshallah ta'ala, you're not sinful for that suspicion that you have. No. Yeah, sure.
So one of the questions from the sisters is, can the brothers please provide a clear discernment on meat killed in the name of Allah versus meat from the people of the book?
Clear discernment.
What's the difference?
Fine.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah. So the biha meat is that which fulfills certain criteria. Not just that the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned at the time of slaughtering, but the manner in which it is slaughtered, such that the blood is allowed to leave the body of the animal. That the animal itself is permissible to be eaten, because you can slaughter something in the name of Allah that's not permissible to eat in the first place. So there are criteria that have to be fulfilled. As for the meat of the people of the book, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clearly made that permissible in the Quran. اليوم أحل لكم الطيبات وطعام الذين أوتوا الكتاب حل لكم وطعامكم حل لهم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that today the tayyibat, those things that are good and pure, have been made permissible for you, and the food of the people of the book is permissible for you, and your food is permissible for them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make it a condition for us to look at how their meat was slaughtered, nor to look at, stay with me, nor to look at their belief system. So we don't come now and say, well, the Christians now, they say that Jesus is the son of Mary, so, and they worship him, and so they're really mushrikun, so we can't, they were mushrikun back then. They worship, they said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَفَرَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْمَسِيحُ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ. Indeed, they have disbelieved those who say that Allah is the son of Mary, Jesus the son of Mary. So it wasn't like their beliefs were any better then than the beliefs that they have now. In fact, I mean, when you look at it, it's just that they have different, you know, denominations and sects now than they had back then. But in general, they still had false beliefs about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They still believed in the Trinity, even back then. But their food was made halal. Now, the question is this. If you are with a Muslim, and a Muslim says, Bismillah, he takes a hammer, and he knocks a cow over the top of his head with a hammer, kills him. Not that that's going to kill him, but you get the idea. Is it permissible for you to eat that meat? Even though he's Muslim? Okay, so same thing. If you know that a Christian or a Jew has not slaughtered the animal, that is, that the animal died before they actually slaughtered it, then it's impermissible for you to eat that, even though they're from the people of the book. So this is the case, for example, with the majority of the way that they kill cows in this country is that shot to the head. And they're dead before they actually slaughtered them. This is the case with the majority of that. With the chickens, it's a bit different. But the point is that in general, the meat of the people of the book, the food of the people of the book is permissible for us to eat. The same way that food that comes to us from Muslims is permissible for us to eat, even though we don't know how they slaughter necessarily. This is why in the hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she mentions that some people were uncomfortable eating the meat from new Muslims. Hadithu ahdin bi kufr, she said in the hadith. She said to the Prophet ﷺ that they are hadithu ahdin bi kufr, that they just came out of kufr. They used to, like, they're brand new Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ said, you all say Bismillah wa kulu and eat it. Say Bismillah and eat it, because it's coming from Muslims, right? So in general, we're not going to investigate any of the meat that comes from a Muslim. If a Muslim tell you it's halal, halas. You ain't got to go, you know, searching back and trying to figure out who certified them and all of that type of stuff. And when it comes from the people of the book in general, we don't need to investigate in general. The problem for us in this country is that that's already been investigated. It's not something that's uncommon knowledge as to how they slaughter their animals. And so if you know, for example, that the meat has not been slaughtered properly, then you should stay away from it. The last thing I'm going to say about this particular point is this. As Muslims, especially in this city and surrounding areas, what need do we have for the meat of the people of the book? No, honestly, if we don't support the Muslims, what are we expecting? The Jews to come buy halal? Is that what we wait for? The Hindus and the Buddhists to come buy halal? If we don't support ourselves, we're not going to have the option of halal down the line. And that's why it's so important that no matter what, even if we said that it's totally permissible, that there's not even a gray area, we should still be supporting the Muslims. Somebody's going to come and say, yeah, but halal meat costs, you know, more than the regular. Okay, you pay more for anything else you like. Adidas costs more than Bobos, but Bobos still exist today. I just dated myself. We still buy them because you like them. Yeah, I show my age on that. MashaAllah. Like, Allah, nah. Next question, Shaykh.
Can I? Just on that note, can we briefly touch on gravity from Valley School?
Like, I'll just say this without even going to the ayah. Eating meat that is not permissible, consuming things that are not permissible, not just the meat, but consuming things that are not permissible in general, and is one of the things that prevents your dua from being accepted. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that man, Ash'ath Akbar. And he said the man was disheveled. He was in a state where in general, and he was traveling, and he raised his hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he said, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. So he's calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by one of his beautiful names. He's got his hands raised. He's traveling. All of these are ways or means for your dua to be accepted. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, but his clothing is haram. And what he's wearing is impermissible. Either he purchased it with impermissible wealth, or the actual thing he's not permitted to wear, like a man wearing silk or something like that. مَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامُ غُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ. What he eats is haram. He's been nourished with haram. فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. How can his dua be answered? He's the one that put a barrier between himself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's important that we are conscious of what we put in our bodies.
Now, the next question, the brother asks, if you're fasting, you need to break your fast, and the only thing that you have to break your fast is pork. Is it permissible to eat pork to break your fast, if that's the only thing you have left to break your fast?
What does that mean? I need to break my fast. Because needing, the fast can be broken with niyyah. Meaning that at the time of iftar, Maghrib comes in, and it's time for the person to break his fast. And the only thing around for him are things that are impermissible to consume, then he simply has the intention of breaking his fast, and his fast is broken. The fast is broken at that particular point. That's something that, honestly, that a lot of people are not conscious of. So one of the ways, let's just say a person, a quiz question to break the monotony, huh? Like, here you go. You got a guy, he says, as soon as I get to the store, I'm going to buy myself an iced tea and a bag of chips, and I'm done with this fast for the day. I'm just going to make it up. This is too much for me. It's a hot day. And I'm going to break. And he is totally determined that as soon as he gets to the store, he's breaking his fast. Gets to the store is closed. Like, does he still have a fast or not? Yes or no? He didn't do anything. He didn't drink anything. He didn't eat anything. His intention was that his fast is done. And because that intention happened, his fast is done. Now, that's different from a person who says, oh my God, it's a rough day. And he's in the store and he's looking at the water and he's like, man, should I break this or not? But he doesn't have any firm intention. It's just that he's talking to himself about it. That doesn't break the fast. That doesn't break the fast. Nah.
Now, the next question.
So I just can't picture a scenario. I just can't picture a scenario where a person has to break his fast on pork.
Right. The next question. Is it permissible for a woman to fast the days of Shawwal before making up her days for Ramadan if she runs out of time to complete both in the month of Shawwal, considering that we are given until next Ramadan to make those days up?
Yeah, so there's a big difference of opinion amongst the scholars on that issue of fasting the 6 days of Shawwal before making up the days of Ramadan. And the reason, the difference of opinion goes back to this. Can I'll simplify the terminology. Can I spend when I owe? Can I give in charity when I have an obligatory debt that I have to pay off? You understand the question? So those who say that she can fast the 6 days of Shawwal before making up her days of Ramadan say that she has all the way up until the next Ramadan, that is even in Sha'ban, she has all the way up until that time to make up her days. But she only has this time in Shawwal to fast the 6 days of Shawwal. All right? Okay. Therefore, she can fast the 6 days of Shawwal and then make up the days of Ramadan after that. The same way that if you had a debt that you owed to somebody, you owed them $500, for example, but he's giving you 11 months to pay him back. Can't you give in charity in the meantime? If you want to give somebody $5 here or $10 there, you can still do that, as long as you make sure that you pay off your debt in time. The other scholars say no, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man sama Ramadana, thumma atba'ahu sittan min Shawwal, فكأنما صام الدهر." Whoever fasts Ramadan and then follows it up with 6 days in Shawwal, then it is as if he has fasted the entire year. They say that if you have days left of Ramadan, then it is not proper to say that you fasted Ramadan. You fasted some of Ramadan. You didn't fast Ramadan. So in any event, what I recommend is, in that situation, is that a person strive to make up their days from Ramadan first, and then after that, fast the 6th of Shawwal. And if they don't come, they don't have the ability. Let's just say that half of Shawwal is gone. They've only been able to make 2 days up from Ramadan or 3 days up, and they want to get the 6 in from Shawwal, and then make up the days from Ramadan. And you can make them up at any time, inshallah ta'ala, but the faster, the better.
Right, so the next question about that is, can you make up your days from Ramadan and fast Shawwal at the same time?
No,
meaning combine.
No. Combining the niyyah, you can't combine the niyyah of fasting the 6 days of Shawwal with making up Ramadan. Making up Ramadan has to have its own niyyah. Yeah.
Right. If a person forgets how many days they missed, how many should they do?
They go with the larger number that's in their mind. So if they forget, was it, for example, 8 days or 6 days, right? Then they're going to go with 8 days.
What are some goals that a person can do or have besides completing the Quran?
Excellent. So, you're talking about for Ramadan, please. Yeah. So alhamdulillah. One of the things that you look at besides the recitation of the Quran is reformation of character. We all, if we're true to ourselves, we can all look at a character flaw that we have that needs to be worked on. It's no better time to work on that character flaw than during the month of Ramadan. Identifying it and working on a solid plan to change. Another thing is the memorization of dua and incorporation of dua. So not just that, for example, we know that the Prophet ﷺ told Mu'adh, where's Mu'adh? Yeah, Mu'adh. The Prophet ﷺ took Mu'adh by the shoulder and he said, "Inni uhibbuk, I love you. فَلَا تَدَعَنَّ أَن تَقُولَ فِي دُبُرِ كُلِّ صَلَاةٍ اللَّهُمَّ أَعِنِّي عَلَى ذِكْرِكَ وَشُكْرِكَ وَحُسْنِ عِبَادَتِكَ." I love you, Mu'adh. So don't leave off saying at the end of every salat, Allahumma a'inni ala dhikrika wa shukrika wa husni ibadatik. Oh Allah, aid me in showing my gratitude to you and thanking you. Oh, ala dhikrika, remembering you, thanking you, and worshiping you properly. We should be memorizing these du'as that the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions. All of the du'as that the Prophet ﷺ used to make in the morning and the evening before going to sleep. Make that part of your repertoire. This is something that you can do in the month of Ramadan, and you'll find it easier than you will in any other time of the year, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So that's another goal. Another objective or another goal that a person should have in Ramadan is to establish the habit of praying the night prayer. That is critical. That You get that out of Ramadan. That Ramadan doesn't come and go. And you're sitting up there and you're praying every night, an hour and a half, 45 minutes, or whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes easy for you. And then you go back to zero after Ramadan. As in nothing, not even 3 rakats after Isha. I mean, that really, honestly, when we think about it, it doesn't really make sense. But it's something that we can carry over with us. The point is establishing regularity in your worship. And this is something that Ramadan can do with you. Walhamdulillah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. And I want to thank Shaykh Ali and Shaykh Saeed for having me here at the Imam Muslim Family Center. This is my first time actually speaking here. And it's an honor. It's also an honor to be in the company of the Qura crew here, Sheikh Farouk, and the brothers who took that time out of their lives to dedicate to studying overseas. And I know that a lot of people don't realize, they think it's just a cakewalk. I do anything to live in Mecca. I do anything to live in Medina. Until you get there and then you realize you wouldn't do anything. Sometimes you do anything to leave. And you don't realize that there's difficulties that come with that. And there's a struggle and there's a lot that has to be sacrificed. And that's the part that the people don't understand. The sacrifice that goes in to leaving and everything behind that you had going on in your life. Whether it was a career, whether it was academics and so on. And then repurposing and rededicating your life to something else. Only to come back thinking that, yeah, people are going to appreciate what I did, only to find out that it's not all, you know, roses. It's not a cakewalk, and there's a lot of struggle involved. But alhamdulillah, you know, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, to be amongst these brothers here. Wallahu a'lam. Jazakumullah khairan for coming out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Before everybody leaves, it's a table out back with flyers for 2 different programs. Also, the food is on sale. Full platters, $5. What we don't want to do is take home or leave all of this food